Hey, ladies and gents, today we're taking a look back at Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. I'm joined by Dom.
Soap McTavish.
So today we're going to be talking about the 2007 breakout hit, which is odd to say for a Call of Duty game, developed by Infinity Ward. It's seen tremendous critical success. It's been clamored for as far as it being remastered. We saw that Activision went a weird way about including it in a game and not letting it by its standalone, but it's a whole conversation for another day. The most interesting thing about this game, before we get into the actual game, is that the team that made this game broke away from Activision and ended up creating Respawn. The Infinity Ward guys, they made Titanfall, and it's a very surprising shooter that kind of evolved the genre in a way we didn't expect, and I think Call of Duty 4 did that in a lot of ways, right? It has a multiplayer that was played for far too many hours by far too many people. But let's get started at the base of the conversation, which is the single-player mode. So the single-player, for shooters for a long time, I don't know if you felt the same way, Dom, but when I played a shooter, the story was secondary. Like, you would play through the single-player campaign, but it didn't matter. You were just shooting stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I think with Call of Duty 4, it was the first game in which, and obviously there's a lot of weird tropey stuff, and it's not like a Naughty Dog style story or anything like that, but there was a lot of interesting moments in it. It centers around ultranationalists in Russia, basically feuding with the government and wanting to take over. And I think the coolest part about it was you had this back and forth of playing with these veterans, because you switch characters throughout the game, and playing with these like new rookies, right? And it's kind of, in a lot of shooters, the rookie aspect or the perspective is what we usually get caught in, and being able to flash back is really cool. I guess the jumping off point is the first mission's pretty memorable when you're on the ship and rain's coming down very heavy, man. And you're trying to escape, and the ship's sinking. What were your initial thoughts when you first popped in that game and started playing the single player? Like, how did it hit you?
So actually, a decent story. Bunch of my friends had this game and saying, you gotta get this game, you gotta play this game with us. So eventually got it on Xbox 360 and went straight into multiplayer. Played tons of multiplayer. Then it came up in conversation one day about the single player, and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't even started that yet. And a couple of my friends were like, dude, go play the single player like right now. Okay, sure, whatever. And yeah, no, it's something. That first level, now that you bring it up, that it does come back to me. They give you that MP5 and you're kind of going in stealth at first, and then you end up with that sinking ship, and it's just madness. The entire single player campaign is probably the best video game version of a Michael Bay movie. Probably even better than his actual movies, but nonetheless, actually, I'm gonna tone that back. He did Armageddon and a few others. Anyway, tons of action sequences that hadn't really. I mean, at least in my experience, and seemingly most of the industry would concur that there weren't many, campaigns that did action sequences at this level and at that, at that magnitude, right? And then of course it's first person, so you're feeling it. You're feeling that water come through when you're in that ship and so on. So yeah, the campaign in general, the action sequences are what really set it apart. And apart from that, we're going to get into some of the particular missions that really stand out too. But yeah, the campaign is phenomenal.
Well, the interesting thing is Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is one of the few games in which you can show me a screenshot from the campaign, and I might not specifically beat for beat know exactly what happened, but I can give you a loose narrative of what happened during that mission. And I instantly remember that mission, right? And I think that's huge for a game, especially for a shooter. There's very few games that aren't shooters where they kind of rely more on story, where it's hard enough to remember stuff. But for a game to be a shooter, be as good as it is, and one thing we don't have to mention is how good the shooting mechanics are, because it's a Call of Duty game. That goes without saying, right? The interesting thing too is the antagonist, because
I think that is worth pointing out, because sorry to interrupt, but I think that's worth spending a quick moment on, because this was the first, at least in my opinion, first Call of Duty game that really truly nailed down those shooting mechanics, right? The few World War II games before, it was clunky, it wasn't, it was so-so, but to me this was the first this is what a shooter can be, as far as the tightness of the controls and so on. And Halo was going on around this time too, but that sort of did its own thing, good in its own regard. But the mechanics of this game were phenomenal, and it holds up, right?
And they also had the attention to detail of making sure the guns, when you reloaded the guns, it looked like how you would reload it in real life. If you go back and play the game, each gun has its own reload animation, which you're thinking like, oh yeah, of course it does. But it's specific to that gun, and that's those small details. And like I said, the Infinity Ward that's at Activision now isn't the same Infinity Ward. Not that they don't make good games, but Vincent Palla and those guys knew how to make solid shooters, and you could see that it was evident. And I do think you're right. We should talk about that it was the first Call of Duty that got things like the shooting mechanics perfect, or as close to it as possible. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but I think that's the whole reason. And we'll eventually get into the multiplayer of why the multiplayer jumped off as much as it did, is because it felt so good. But as far as single player, I think there's a couple of missions that we can talk about. We can go, honestly, if we were to have the time to research, we can go mission by mission and talk about it. But I think there's two things in particular that we want to cover. One of them is the sniping mission that's probably synonymous with Call of Duty 4, which is All Ghillied Up. It is the first mission of its kind that I remember playing. I think the only other mission I remember playing, and there was a lot of copies of this level after that fact. The only other one that's as memorable to me is the one in Halo Reach, which obviously came out after Call of Duty 4. But I mean, you're basically, covered up in this ghillie suit. There's an army marching, and the goal is you have to, at the beginning of the mission, crawl through this grass and not get detected, which is really cool because when you started this game, it's like, oh, it's an FPS, I just need to shoot things and kill things, and then it completely switches the dynamic of, no, this is also a stealth game, right?
Man, you're laying down in that field, and some guys walk past you, but then doesn't a tank literally roll over you too?
Yep.
And you just gotta sit and wait, and it's just, you could feel it. Like, it's a video game on a screen, but you could feel your heart pumping, oh damn, gotta be quiet, right?
Exactly. It was so cool because a lot of the haptic feedback started happening really solidly through that time through the Xbox controller as well. So you would be sitting there and you'd feel the slight rumble in the controller from the tank, you know what I mean? And that mission overall, it's a pretty lengthy mission, and it has you going from different types of stealth, like laying on the ground to going through buildings. For somebody like me who appreciates sniping, it's probably my favorite thing to do in a shooting game. I'm not the shotgun guy a lot of times. I'm the let me set up, let me get a nice snipe shot, handle things that way. That mission was everything to me. And like I said before, it was the first time that personally I played a mission like that, where it was, no, you're a sniper in this mission. You're not guns a-blazing. You're handling this the way a sniper would, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that game looked so beautiful at the time. Obviously, as time went, people wanted to remaster for several different reasons. And the game aged decently well. But when that game came out in 2007, it was beautiful. That ghillie suit looked great. It was such a great mission. I think the other one, because I think we're going to go for a while on the multiplayer aspect, so I just want to finish up here. Towards the end of the game, there's a mission called Mile High Club, and basically what it is you have to escape a crashing airplane. You have to get to the front, the pilot's cabin, or whatever it's called.
Cockpit.
The cockpit, yeah, pilot's cabin, yeah, that's what it's called. And basically, so it's centered around it's not that hard. There's I think 6 or 8 guys on the ship and on the plane, and you have to kill them and get through. It's not that difficult, but if you completed it under 12 seconds, I believe, on the hardest difficulty, you got an achievement called Mile High Club, and this was probably the hardest achievement in 2007. I think this was the hardest achievement people felt, right, was the Mile High Club achievement. It was one that you bragged about to people. It was one that you posted on message boards and forums saying, I got the Mile High Club achievement. And it did take a lot to get. I got the achievement. Did you get it, Dom?
No, absolutely not.
No? Yeah, so it took a lot of patience. You had to... One thing we didn't touch on, and we can talk about real quickly, is the flashbangs in Call of Duty 4 were flashbangs.
Yeah.
You got hit with those things, your ear started ringing, it was complete white screen. They handled that really well. In Mile High Club, in order to finish it under 12 seconds and get the achievement, and I might be wrong with the 12 seconds, I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was, you would have to strategically throw your grenades in specific spots. The MP5 was the best gun to use for it. You had to make sure to reload at certain points, not reload at other points. It took a lot to get, but it was I think it was the start of my achievement addiction, of me wanting to accomplish things in games because I loved them so much. And Call of Duty 4 was one of those games that I played nonstop, and it was this is a way to show my appreciation for the game, right? So I think Mile High Club was huge. I think All Ghillied Up is still regarded as one of the best FPS missions ever in games. for a game that, as it sits, is 10 plus years old. So I think that's huge. But let's talk about the part where we spent too much time in. The multiplayer. You can go ahead and start off with, how your experiences with multiplayer and stuff like that, and then we can kind of form the conversation around that. So go ahead.
So to lead off, like I said, when I first got this game, went right into the multiplayer, and just guessing, I have no idea, no way to have measured this, but I must have spent thousands of hours playing this game online with my friends, which, this was around like late middle school, early high school era for me. So this was a time when I had all the time in the world every night to play with a bunch of my actual friends, which was a whole new thing in itself, was playing multiplayer games online over Xbox Live. That was a whole new thing in and of itself. That was remarkable. But then, of course, this game was on another level. That sounds cheesy, but that's the best way to describe it, I think, of what was available at the time. This was it. Me and a couple of my buddies, we got good at this game. And it sounds so weird of me saying it now because in general, I kind of suck at games, especially, multiplayer games. But we were at the point where we were on, what was the website called? Game Battles?
Game Battles.
Yep.
Game Battles, yeah.
We had different clans going, and we were, pumped when we get in, like, the top 100 in the world and all that kind of stuff. And I remember even trying out for a clan. Literally, a clan held tryouts, exclusive tryouts, mind you, that, you had to know people to even get invited. And that's what this whole thing turned into. It got to the point where we wouldn't even play public matches online. We'd ridicule people saying, "Oh, you're gonna go play pubs? Like anyone can get a 10.0 KD in pubs," and that kind of thing. Like I couldn't have been more into this game at the time. Now I just had to get that all out. So the reason being of this obsession was, like we mentioned earlier, the mechanics, the controls, the shooting. It was all so good. It was exactly on point from a mechanical standpoint, like we said. And then on top of that, everything, even to this day as I think about it, felt so perfectly balanced. You had your submachine guns, your assault rifles, your LMGs and everything, and you would, of course, create your own class, customize, give yourself only a couple of perks, a couple of different attachments, nothing too crazy like it eventually turned into. To me, like, that's the perfect amount of customization I'd want in a multiplayer game, where you get to, choose your own style, but it's not complete madness, nuke kill streaks and all this other stuff. It was just, 3 kills get you that UAV, 5 gets you the
airstrike, and then 7 helicopter.
Yeah. The kill streaks and then the guns, everything about it felt so balanced and perfect that I think it lended itself really well to a competitive experience. Really, it makes me think of how you described Overwatch today a little bit, where it is really well balanced. And at the time, there wasn't. It had started with the quick scoping nonsense, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it got. There still was great sniping in this game, and then some levels were smaller. I forget what it's called with the shipping crates, that tiny level where you'd obviously want that MP5 and running around. It's just,
I think it was just called Shipment.
Yeah, that must have been it. And fun little exploit on that. I actually got to the point where I could play that game one-on-one with someone, because you could do what's called a cage match. And if I got the first kill, I could shoot through specific crates in specific locations and can kill you over and over every time you spawn. That's where I was at with this fucking game. So,
the big thing there is, and could be us old men nostalgizing this, but I really don't think so, is the reason that game was so great, besides the amazing shooting mechanics, was the fact that it was so simplistic, that there was only 3 kill streaks. Yep. And I think that allowed people to focus on the gunplay and getting good at using the guns and getting good at, strategies and figuring out things. Whereas as Call of Duty's evolved, it's become more about the kill streaks and less about the guns, I feel, a lot of the times. Yeah. Where you're basically trying to find a means to an end, where you want to get the gun that gets you to this kill streak, which gets you to this kill streak, which gets you to this kill streak. Whereas I felt a lot of times in COD 4 and a little bit in Modern Warfare 2 as well, is you had to use your guns. You had to be very careful with ammo. You had to be very careful, especially in like search and destroy matches, of picking up another gun because you would run out of ammo.
And it wasn't. Don't even get me started on search and destroy.
A lot of times now you see these clips of people going 40 and 2 and 30 and 1 and all this stuff, but like 20 plus of the kills are from kill streaks. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying you didn't get some kill streaks in COD 4, but it was a lot more simplistic. The skins, though there was a decent amount of them, it wasn't drastic. It wasn't all these macrotransaction things with meme lord, weed symbols, and all this stuff on it. It was, you had your blue tiger, your red tiger, your gold, and it was just very simplistic and fun. And it was the game in which I got the most competitive at the quickest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I was good at Halo 2 and stuff like that. But once COD 4 came, it was another level of me wanting to be good at that game. I think it was both of our first entry into what would later become esports, as we know it today, and getting into that environment of competing and stuff like that. And I grew up playing sports, you did too, and I'm pretty sure we're both pretty competitive guys. And I think Call of Duty 4 was the best melting pot of being competitive in a video game at that time. And yeah, though we played it a lot, both of us, and I think a lot of my friendship is built on that, of having those experiences and having fun. And I can talk for hours and hours with my friends about Call of Duty 4, and I think that's something cool. And I think we can sit here and talk about multiplayer all we want and all that stuff, but I think the way I want to end this conversation is the current state of Call of Duty 4. And I know that's a weird discussion for a game that's 10 plus years old, but the way Activision has handled the game since, I think, is very poor. As it sat before the remaster, you could go back and try to play Call of Duty 4, but all of the lobbies were botted and modded and messed up, and all these people are doing these weird exploits that don't really make sense. And it basically took away from the quality of life, right? And constantly forever, my friends and I would talk about wanting to just play it on this generation of consoles. And what we got was a remaster that was tied to a game people necessarily maybe didn't want, and you couldn't buy it standalone. And on the worst part of that, not only did they release the game, because Activision is the way they are, and some people could say the excuse is they modernized it. I have to vastly disagree with this. They started putting in all of the microtransaction heavy multiplayer stuff into the remaster, which makes it a different game, right? It's not the game that we wanted remastered. So I just want to hear from you what you think about the current state of Call of Duty 4. I think it's a shame that...
Yeah, that stuff's unfortunate. I don't know what could be done about, going back on the Xbox 360 lobbies, for example, and finding a bunch of hacks and, cheats and mods and all sorts of nonsense like that. I've heard about that a lot, and that's unfortunate. I don't know what the solution is for that. It's just completely ignored at this point, right?
Yeah.
By Activision, at least. Because that would kind of be crazy for them to go back and worry about that. But more disappointing is, like you're saying, that microtransaction stuff and the remasters. I didn't even play the remaster, so it was really disheartening when you first told me about that. I was kind of like, yeah, that's gross. I mean, and I was all right with how they priced it, where it had to be bundled with Infinite Warfare. I was okay with that. I understood that. I'm not going to hold a grudge against Activision for that, but the transaction stuff where they're actually changing the game at that level, it's more than just a visual upgrade. Yeah, that rubs me the wrong way. But I do.
So then you're basically prison holding a game that isn't even the game we wanted. So not only are you attaching it to something, which is fine, and you can make an argument where that's fine and where it's not, you're changing the game. So as it currently sits, we don't have a comfortable way to play multiplayer on that game.
Yeah. So I think it would be cool if they did release this on its own, that remaster, that maybe they put it on Battle.net to kind of cut down on some of the hacking and that sort of stuff too. But just a thought.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not the game that we want, right? It's a different game.
Right.
So therefore, even if this game comes out standalone eventually at some point, or if it already has, it's not the game we wanted or we want. So the game we originally played in 2007, we can't play it anymore. Because if you go online and play, we can play the single player, but we can't play any of the multiplayer because it's either broken or it's changed drastically. Yeah. If you were to get 100 people who loved Call of Duty 4 in a room, which probably wouldn't be that hard to do, and you told them, okay, we're asking you for advice. It's one of these two options. Would you rather have the game be $60 standalone, or the situation it is now where it's bundled in and then it'll eventually come out on its own and it might be $40, it might not be? I'm pretty sure a vast majority of them would say, I'll just take the $60 standalone visual upgrade, right? And it's a shame. Oh, yeah. But I think Call of Duty 4 was a great game for its time. I think it's going to hold up. It's definitely going to always be in the, I would say, personally, top 10 shooters of all time. For me, it's definitely in the top 3, maybe even the top 1.
No, I'm with you on the top 3. It might be the number one. Yeah.
Yeah, it did a lot for single player campaign. It did a lot for multiplayer landscape. It did a lot for the improvement of Xbox Live and online services as a whole.
Yep.
So I think Call of Duty 4 is a very important game in terms of video games and where we're at today as far as multiplayer. So hats off to it. I think we both love that game more than anything. That's been a look back at. Thank you guys for joining us. Catch us in the next one when we talk about some other game that came out not too long ago
in the
or
past.
very long ago. Exactly. Bye.